as an organism that's resistant. So what about my children and my grandchildren and their children? What's left for them if the organisms are resistant? It's a problem. And what contributes to the problem? Microorganisms become resistant to the drug. That's the mechanism, but that hasn't created the problem. What has created the problem? That's part of it, but that's not what created the problem. The problem is us. We have overused them. I don't know about in Indonesia, but in the US and the UK, right, and the EU, the pig farmers and the cattle farmers and the sheep farmers, they put antibiotics in the food. Why? Cow healthy when they are all closed in one pen, and therefore they grow faster and they produce more meat. But in their fecal material, they shed bacteria that have developed drug resistance. Drug resistance is often on a plasmid. So the resistance against penicillin is on these, not in the host, the information to resist or degrade penicillin is not on the host chromosome, the cell chromosome. It's on a small circular piece of DNA called a plasmid. And you put one more bacteria next to it, this organism will release a plasmid. Have you heard of that? Yeah, so now you have one organism that tells the cell how to chop up penicillin. And now you have another organism, and they don't have to be related. This could be Klebsiella, and this one could be E. coli. It pinches off a plasmid, E. coli takes it up. Now it's resistant to penicillin. Yes?
I want to ask something. What is or when the best time that we use antibiotic?
When is the best time?
Yeah.
When the doctor tells you to. You know, we really have to rely on the judgment of a physician, but there's a certain scenario. One of the jobs I do is I actually teach in a medical school in the U.S. Okay, and I teach antimicrobial drugs. It's one of the subjects I teach, but I teach the doctors when to do it. There's a good chance he will get a secondary infection with a bacteria, right? Streptococcus pneumoniae. So even though he has influenza, me as a physician, I might give him antibiotics, but I would never give you antibiotics, right? Because you are young and healthy, but he is old, right? But so it's you have to understand the whole picture, you know, of your patient, the bacteria that may be causing the disease, if it is a bacteria, and understand those, and then you can prescribe it properly. Right? Another reason that we think resistance is occurring is that it promotes drug resistance. Because there's maybe a few left back that have developed resistance and you're not killing them. Because you're not using the full course of your antibiotics. Neisseria and gonorrhea, what disease does it cause? What disease does Neisseria gonorrhea cause? We should know this. You are at the right age to know this. I'm a human. And now look. Resistance. In all the hospitals, when we isolated, 8 to 9% of all the Neisseria are now resistant to many different antibiotics. So it's a problem. One last thing. There's another bacterium in the world today that's called MRSA. Have you heard of it? So methicillin resistant Staph aureus, methicillin resistant. Staph is a very, Staphylococcus aureus, a very serious organism. If it gets into your blood and you don't treat it right away, it's not good. Because it breaks red blood cells down immediately. It forms an enzyme, a hemolysin that breaks red blood cells down. You must treat it right away and treat it properly. We used to use penicillin all the time. Then it developed resistant. Most all Staph aureus are now resistant in the world. Right? In the world are resistant to penicillin. So then we modified penicillin to make methicillin. And then we could treat it. That only was useful for 10 years. And now most of the Staph aureus are developing resistance to methicillin. As microbes are evolving the ability to resist our new drugs because we are overusing antibiotics. Thank you very much for attending.
No questions?
Last question, sir?
I'm going to put this on your desktop.
Next question, sir? I have here the research in Matara. Almost all of the places in refill the water contained in the spore. What is the best solution and the cheap solution to make clean water that is not contained in the spore?
There's not too many spores that you can ingest. You can inhale them, it can be a problem. There's not too many in water that you can ingest that cause disease. In water, you're mostly worried about gram-negative bacteria, which do not form spores. So spores in water, unless the concentration is very high, or they are anthrax spores, or clostridiums, certain clostridium spores, they're usually not a problem in water. You don't have to worry about, you need to worry about getting rid of the gram-negatives, the gram-negative bacteria in water, and the protozoans in water. That's the biggest thing in water. Tuesday at what time? At 9? This fast?